Hello everyone. Welcome to our webinar, our Educator Workforce webinar. It's February 22nd, 2019. This webinar is within our Educator Workforce webinar series, and this webinar will focus on district culture and staff recognition. Thank you so much for joining us today for this webinar. This series is designed to support school and district leaders with their efforts to develop their local educator workforce. So with us today, my name is Brian Lloyd. I am an education research consultant for the Office of Educator Excellence within the Michigan Department of Education. Some of my work involves measuring student growth for educator evaluation as well as educator workforce research. Also joining us today and leading this webinar is Joe Priest, education consultant for Office of Educator Excellence. He does a lot of work with educator evaluations and work around professional learning and professional growth and the facilitation of continuous improvement for our workforce. And also joining us is Josh Reisner. He does a lot of great work around teacher recognition. He does a lot of work leading the efforts for Michigan Teacher of the Year as well as other very successful teacher recognition programs that MDE provides in an effort to promote the work of teachers across the state of Michigan. So it is an honor to host this meeting for the participants throughout the state for this webinar. We're very excited to share some content with you to support your practices towards supporting your local educators. We want to encourage your participation during the webinar, so please, we have a question and answer module within this webinar, and we want to extend you an invitation to post your questions or observations within this module. And we have consultants that will respond to questions and comments. Your questions and comments can help further the learning of all those who are connected. We're also going to be recording this webinar and providing it to be publicly available at a later date. So not only those who are connected to this webinar will learn from your questions, but also potentially others later at a later date as well. Additionally, after the webinar, we're going to send out an email with the slide deck along with a recording of the webinar to all participants. So please note that there is a sketch survey, S-C-E-C-H survey, through the MTOY system that will be sent at the conclusion of the webinar series, and must be completed in order to earn those sketch credits. Participant registration records will be kept to ensure participants earn credit for attendance at the live webinars. And thank you again so much for joining us today. Our work today and throughout the year supports Michigan Department of Education's Top 10 in 10 strategic plan to help Michigan become a top 10 education state within 10 years. Our work is focused around strategic goal number 3, and strategic goal number 3 is focused on the development, support, and sustaining of a high quality, prepared, and collaborative education workforce. So our work today is centered around that strategic goal. The Office of Educator Excellence, where our units reside, supports the educator pipeline from preparation and placement through the development and retention of Michigan teachers and administrators. Our goal is to support Michigan educators and support our educators to support their students. So our areas of focus today, we're going to present some data on Michigan educator, and specifically Michigan teacher, mobility and attrition data. This data also includes some indicators of the stability of our teacher workforce. And we'll get into that in a little bit more detail. We're going to talk about the elements of school and district culture and what kind of effects that can have on our workforce and the work that our teachers provide with our students. We're going to have a focus on teacher leadership, building a positive culture within our schools, and we're going to talk about recognition programs that promote the work of teachers throughout our state. So to begin a conversation around teacher mobility, teacher attrition, and I also do want to remind everybody that if you have called into our conference line, please mute your phone so that we do not get any distracting feedback for the participants who are within this webinar. So to begin the conversation about educator mobility, educator attrition, and educator stability within our workforce, it's good to go over some key vocabulary terms to begin this conversation. So turnover, as we talk about turnover when looking at this data, turnover is the teaching in a school 1 year and then not teaching in that same school the following year. So this turnover causes some costs to school districts and creates some instability within schools and creates a position that needs to be filled. Mobility, as we talk about mobility, is a teacher who stays employed but moves to a different school. And in the data that we're going to be providing, that could be moving from one school to another school within the same district, as well as moving from one school to another school not in the same district. So in both instances, that does create a position that does need to be filled and is an indicator of stability or instability of our teacher workforce. Another key term is attrition, which is a teacher who is employed in a school building 1 year, and then the next year they have left the teaching workforce entirely and are no longer assigned to any school buildings in the state of Michigan. And then finally, stability, which is a teacher who is teaching in the same school or multiple schools in consecutive years. So that is an indicator of stability of our teacher workforce. So there's been some prior research dating back some years around teacher stability, around teacher mobility, attrition, and teacher turnover. Richard Ingersoll is a prominent education researcher out of the University of Pennsylvania. He's done a lot of work around in this area. And he's done some research on the costs of instability and teacher attrition and turnover. And he provided a report that estimates that states spend between $1 billion and $2.2 billion a year on teacher attrition and turnover. And this turnover is not equally distributed across states. The research tells us that high poverty schools experience a turnover rate of about 20% per calendar year, so roughly 50% higher than the rate of more affluent schools. So when they're knowing that there are costs associated with this turnover, and that typically high poverty schools typically are strapped for resources, this exacerbates the inequities between resources available to schools when high turnover for these schools causes another additional cost that exacerbates this inequity between of resources. So studies suggest that the price tag for recruitment and replacement seriously underestimates the cumulative costs and stability of the teacher workforce, particularly in chronically underperforming schools that serve our neediest students. If you want to read more on that research, there's a link at the bottom on the path to equity, improving the effectiveness of beginning teachers, that does speak a little bit more to these findings. So an Ingersoll study that was back in 2001 found that data that indicates that school staffing problems are primarily due to excess demand that are resulting from a revolving door of teachers. So teacher recruitment programs alone will not solve the problem of staffing problems of schools if schools don't also address the organizational sources of low retention. So basically increasing the rate of hiring without also increasing the rate of retention does somewhat put a Band-Aid on the difficulty that will remain if those teachers continually move to other schools or leave the profession entirely. So more on the findings, both on that path to equity, improving effectiveness of beginning teachers, and also an update in a study of Alliance for Excellent Teachers that published in July 2014. So more Michigan-specific data. There was an analysis of costs of teacher attrition by state by Richard Ingersoll, and this data was from 2008-2009 and cited within that for 2014 study. Within the state of Michigan, the low estimate cost of teacher turnover within the state of Michigan was a little over $27 million to Michigan schools. On the high estimate, that number would be a little over $59 million. So again, think about the resources that we have available to us and how the cost of attrition can impact those resources. So the true cost is estimated between those two figures, which is a pretty sizable amount. So Michigan Department of Education, the Office of Educator Excellence, has produced some white papers. These white papers were initially to investigate trends of our teacher workforce. These white papers, we began some work initially to investigate, do we have a shortage of teachers within the state of Michigan, and also what are some accurate findings? What is going on with our teacher workforce across the state of Michigan? And what we found was that looking at teacher shortage as we have X amount of teachers, we have X amount of openings, do we have a teacher shortage or not, wasn't really sufficient to be able to fully explain teacher shortage. Just a quick query of principals and superintendents across the state will find a large number of openings that just are very, very difficult to fill, whether we have teachers who are certified who are not currently employed or not. So the reality of the situation is we do have a large number of positions that are not filled. So to be able to address this issue, the questions need to be more nuanced, as do the investigation of the answers for what is happening with our teacher workforce. So our office produced some publicly available white papers. If you click on that link at the bottom, it will take you to a web page for all 4 white papers. The first white paper that we produced on these topics is around Michigan trends in Michigan teacher certification, taking a look at longitudinally what is happening within our within the state of Michigan teacher workforce. And what that paper found was that over the course of the last 15, 20 years, 15, 20 years ago, we produced much more teachers than we had open positions that needed to be filled. But that gap between teacher certification production and the number of open positions has narrowed throughout the course of the last 15, 20 years. So that now we have a much more narrow gap and so we feel the effects much more now with that narrowing of gap than we did 15, 20 years ago, and does cause, is probably related to some of the issues that districts feel across the state. The next white paper that we produced, there's other interesting findings within that white paper. Another white paper that we produced is a white paper on teacher turnover in Michigan, which took a look at the rates in which teachers moved from one building into the other, left the teaching profession no longer assigned to any school building within the state of Michigan, and the rates that teachers stayed in one building or one set of buildings from one year to the next. So we're also able to benchmark these figures against national figures of what is the national averages of teachers who who leave the profession and stay from their building from one year to the next. This data is available to us nationally through the National Center for Education Statistics, so that can be you can find that finding in the white paper. Also, racial characteristics of the Michigan teacher workforce, and Michigan teacher mobility by geographic location and locale. So the findings that we within that Educator workforce mobility white paper that I just talked about can be found on this slide. The figures that you see at the top are national figures that we have from surveys from the National Center for Educational Statistics, and then underneath that is the Michigan mobility data, the number of teachers who stayed in their building from one year to the next, the number of teachers who moved from one building to another, and then the number of teachers who left their profession, and the rates in which teachers stay, move, or leave compared to the rates that teachers stay, move, or leave across the country. We have also taken this data and we have a data set that's not publicly available but can be available upon request that isolates this data by districts, that aggregates this mobility data by district. So both for ISDs and RESAs, and also for school districts, what is the rate that your teachers stay, move, or leave, and compare that against the averages for districts across the state, as well as we have those benchmarks for what the national rates of moving, staying, or leaving are. So if you do want what your district's data is, you can send me, Brian Lloyd, an email, and I can get you what your district's stay, move, and leave rates are.
Thank you, Brian. My name is Joe Priest. I'll be leading the next section of the webinar. So Brian spent some time talking about teacher mobility, and so really we are focusing on school culture and district culture as a method to help retain teachers and help districts and public school academies keep those retention and replacement costs down or eliminate them completely. The National School Climate Center notes that research has shown that when school members feel safe, valued, cared for, engaged, and respected, not only does learning increase, but staff satisfaction and retention are also enhanced. So that's why we're going to really emphasize this idea of school culture as a tool that districts can reflect on and improve to, as a method and a means to retain their local educators. So two terms often get intermingled when we talk about school culture, and it's school climate and school culture. You can see some definitions there on this slide. School climate refers mainly to the school's effect on students, where school culture has more of the focus on the adults in the system. Some schools have such a positive school culture that you can see it and feel it as soon as you enter the building. You see it on the walls, you see it in the way students and staff interact with one another, and you can see it in every classroom that you visit. And again, school climate and school culture are terms that are often used as synonyms. However, today we are going to focus on school culture, and specifically with a focus on the adults in the school system. So thinking about some elements of school and district culture, culture reflects the core beliefs and behaviors of the adults in the system. Within a weak or strong culture, what people believe and how they act depends on the messages that the leaders and others in the organization send. A good culture arises from messages that promote some traits like collaboration, honesty, hard work. And culture is shaped by the 5 elements that are presented on this slide. They all weave together. And each of these elements is under the influence of principals, school leaders, and teachers as something that's able to be influenced and positively affected. Around the idea of fundamental beliefs and assumptions, when on that topic, or that element refers to the things that people at your school consider to be true. For example, all students have the potential to succeed, or that teaching is a collaborative team effort. Those are some fundamental beliefs that can contribute to a positive school culture. The idea of shared values, those are the judgments people at your school make about those beliefs and assumptions, if they feel those are right or wrong, good or bad. The norms are how members believe they should act and behave, or what they think is expected of them. For example, we should all be present and engaged at our weekly grade level collaboration meetings. The element of patterns and behaviors are the way people actually behave in a school system. For example, there are regularly scheduled parent engagement nights around college readiness, or there's active participation at weekly curriculum meetings. In a strong culture, the actual behaviors align with the norms that we set, but a sign of a weak culture or a culture that needs to be addressed or improved is seeing behaviors that are different or not consistent with those norms that we've set. The element of tangible evidence is the physical or sensory signs that demonstrate the behaviors of people in a school. For example, posters showcasing the district's college enrollment, or a parking lot full of cars on the day of curriculum meetings. Each of these components influences and drives the others, forming a circle of reinforcing beliefs and actions. And the idea that strong connections among every member of the school community can reinforce these elements and ultimately reinforce an effective school culture. This next slide talks about the idea of teacher involvement and how that can positively affect a school culture. A study done by Ingersoll and some colleagues in 2017 found that teachers' roles in establishing school improvement planning goals and student discipline procedures are some of the most strongly related actions that can be contributors to improved student learning. An effective culture finds ways to leverage opportunities for teacher leadership in these key areas of school improvement planning and district problem solving. Additional high leverage areas for teacher involvement include strong mentoring and induction programs for new teachers. We also believe that educator evaluation provides another opportunity for teacher leaders and teacher leadership to help unpack the complex adopted evaluation tools that we have, help to define classroom observables that are relevant to different instructional settings, and conduct and engage in peer observation to strengthen instructional practice and grow the amount of feedback that teachers and professionals can receive. More on a culture supporting teacher leadership. We know school culture is an important factor for educator satisfaction as well as student achievement. Let's talk about some of the characteristics of a culture that supports this kind of teacher leadership. So one example is the collegial environment. This occurs when teachers collaborate regularly, before, after, during the school day, formally and informally. School staff are united by a shared vision that teachers, administrators, and support staff can all speak to, that they can communicate the school goals, what they are, and how their actions directly are working towards those goals. Having a problem-solving orientation means staff members are more interested in solving problems than just dwelling on them or complaining about them. Instead, teachers see challenges as something that can be overcome. There's no such thing as a problem that is impossible to address. That's the kind of problem-solving orientation that moves culture forward. Students are ours as opposed to yours or mine, and that we all own student successes and challenges. We believe it belongs to everyone, and we're committed to making improvements in those areas. The idea of a culture of trust exists when teachers feel comfortable communicating and surfacing some problems that they see on their day-to-day work, helping others to rally around solutions and feeling that concerns have been heard. A trusting environment enables people to identify problems, which is an important step to move on to the solution-seeking phase of problem analysis. Teachers and principals who have open doors to welcome each other also helps build a culture of trust. There's drops down the expectation of perfection and opens up the idea of making oneself vulnerable for feedback and professional growth. And that everyone maintains a focus on growth and improvement of themselves as well as the system as a whole. Clear communication can also support teacher leadership, helping everyone feel in the loop and that everyone's on the same page. Good two-way communication between teachers and administrators, and also clear, predictable, and reliable communication structures in place, such as weekly communication, email updates, or even monthly staff meetings are an effective tool to clearly communicate. School leaders help set the tone for a positive school culture. School leaders are uniquely positioned to help set the tone in a school building. However, we do acknowledge that no one person holds the sole responsibility for a school's culture. This is a shared effort. Ideally, principal and teachers work together to build this positive workplace, and then including in that, principals can take measures that open space for teacher leadership to help contribute to the culture. So some ways that school leaders can do this: have a growth mindset about the staff, realize that each teacher in your building has unique skills and interests, and then work to develop those skills and also leverage those strengths to the school and community's advantage and mutual benefit, and also giving everyone an opportunity to lead in the areas of strength. School leaders can also be humble and reflective to help build a positive school culture. We know that the job of the principal and school leader is a really big job, and there is no one person who can truly excel in every single area of that vast position. If you're aware of your own strengths and weaknesses, you'll have a better roadmap of where you need support and where you can engage teacher leaders to complement those areas. The more open and honest principals are, the better the chances are that the teachers will trust them. School leaders can be community builders by prioritizing culture and morale, communicating clearly and consistently, and asking questions and being available to listen to answers. Also by valuing collaboration and walking the walk and leading by example. School leaders can also be approachable and flexible. School leaders have to maintain certain non-negotiable items, and principals can do this by being clear about the outcomes they're seeking, but also being flexible about how teachers choose to get there. That will encourage teachers to own their leadership initiatives. To build a culture of trust, principals can demonstrate that they're open to hearing alternative viewpoints, and they can be clear that they are holding teachers accountable for presenting solutions, not just pointing out what might not be working. Also, school leaders help set the tone by stepping out of their comfort zone, using opportunities like the start of a new school year or regular staff meetings to have open and honest conversations about some of the things that are sometimes can be the non-discussables, like school culture, staff morale, and avenues for effective communication. Once principals walk the walk there and step out of their comfort zone, teachers will follow that example. We've got some questions here for school leaders to guide your reflection on the school culture and your professional practice. Do I know my teachers' individual talents and interests well? Is that true for a majority of teachers or just a small group? How am I surveying teachers to gauge their interests and talents in areas like assessment literacy, data analysis, technology, or other areas that might support the greater school staff? And for teachers who take on informal leadership role, let them know that you notice that and you appreciate their behind-the-scenes work. And of course, ask how you can support that work. What are the real non-negotiables? Spend some time scoping out teacher leadership opportunities so you're clear on where and how you can provide teachers opportunities to provide input. Share those non-negotiables with teachers so they understand the boundaries they're working with. This helps ensure that their leadership experience is meaningful and that their results are actionable. Sometimes it can feel when we hand over this responsibility that I'm losing some control. Reflect on why we might feel that way and then consider starting small. It's okay to ask, what can I let go of here? Think broadly about teacher leadership. There's a lot of informal teacher leadership roles and opportunities within schools on a daily basis. And value those informal ones just as much as the formal ones to help elevate teachers' voice and talents. And also consider, how do teachers go about sharing ideas with leadership? When teachers raise a concern, are leaders open to listening, or are they just preparing a response? Think about how you can build collaborative decision-making structures for teachers so that they can be responsible for proposing some new ideas and solutions. Let's talk about how teachers can lead the charge here. So our last slide focused a little bit more on the leadership, administrative leadership. Now we can focus on the teacher leadership aspect of things. It's essential that teachers see themselves as leaders, regardless of their current school culture and principal or colleagues' openness to teacher leadership. We believe there's always ways for teachers to step up and take on some sort of leadership role. Many of you are already working in environments that have a strong leadership culture, and you can start working within that framework. If not, it's time to help develop that culture in which teacher leadership is possible. And here's some suggestions for overcoming some common roadblocks. Take some steps to improve your school's culture. Teacher leaders can, of course, be high profile or behind the scenes. It's often helpful for teacher leaders to have named roles that they can fall back on as they're working with their colleagues. For example, I'm saying this in my role as data coach or instructional leader. And of course, teacher leaders can open their classroom doors to others as a great example of leadership in a way that moves your school's culture to being more open and trusting. Encourage a reluctant principal. Start small. Having conversations with your principal can reassure him or her that the idea of decision making can be a shared activity. Approach the principal with a variety of solutions to problems. Ask them for their input. Think about starting with a small project that's non-threatening and has a high chance of success. Pick the low-hanging fruit first. And teacher leaders need to push away from the fear of things not working out. If teachers avoid leadership out of a fear of failure, they will never build the kind of environment where teacher leaders are truly empowered. If you can model what it looks like to step out of your comfort zone as a teacher, other teachers and a reluctant principal can also follow that lead. And of course, don't wait to be empowered. You already are. If you're a teacher leader. Think about your unique skills and strengths. What's a problem at your school you'd like to solve? And what are some small steps you can take to get started toward a solution? Find allies in your work as a teacher leader. There's at least one other person in your building who thinks the same way that you do about that problem or challenge. Find that person and build a colleague, build a coalition there. You don't need to convert everyone in your building, but you need to bring along others to really get your ideas to flourish. And the ideas of professional learning communities are a great way to support this work. Some ideas for questions for teachers as they guide their reflection about teacher leadership. Am I a solution seeker? Do I have a growth mindset? Am I more suited for a formal or informal role? Have I had conversations with my principal about how they feel about teacher leadership? What bright spots are in our school already? What can I learn from those? and how can we expand those ideas. A few more ideas on building a positive culture. How can school leaders foster a rich and positive school culture? It starts by first understanding what contributes to a school culture. This slide has several ideas on ways to cultivate a vibrant school culture, include living your vision and mission, embracing social emotional learning and making space within the curriculum for those important aspects of learning, fostering a culture of resiliency, where we model how to react and cope with setbacks, communicate well and often to all staff members, all community members, make a point to recognize the great things that your staff and students do, as well as brand your school and emphasize the things that make it special and important, and make sure that everyone feels an ownership in that effort. And also just understand that every bit of positivity and action matters and makes a difference. It's easy to get bogged down in some of the challenges that we face in our world, but every little smile and hello and positive interaction helps to open others and create a sense of belonging. And just finally, before I kick it over to Josh to talk more about teacher recognition, some more strategies for retention here. School and district culture, again, is a key strategy to help retain educators. We suggest that districts consider aligning their efforts with interviews and surveys for existing educators to help measure staff culture, as well as exit interviews for teachers that might be leaving your system to help inform your work about what factors might be under the control of the school or district to help influence. We did provide a resource that's available for download from the New Jersey Department of Education, which is a staff survey tool around the idea of school culture. And all of these ideas would be helping, again, to inform the district about some action steps that they might be able to take to positively influence school culture. Next, Josh Reisner is going to present some information about recognition programs. Thank you again for joining us today.
Thank you, Joe. My name is Josh Reisner. I am an educator talent specialist with the Michigan Department of Education, which is the formal way of saying that I am the coordinator for recognition programs that are housed at the state level. The way that we approach recognition programs is we want it to be more than just a handshake and a certificate marking 5 years, 10 years, 15 years of service, but we want it to be a thoughtful program that's aligned to school and district priorities that shows educators appreciation for their hard work and encourages the community that you serve to take pride in its educators. So our office goal is to foster a system where we have building level recognition that feeds into district level, into regional, and then state levels for our teacher recognition programs. And the idea is to help build capacity among our teachers, helping them grow from being comfortable within their classroom to being comfortable in their building, their district, and then the wider community, and eventually, hopefully, the state level, that they can be ambassadors to help draw more folks into the teaching profession. So while districts often promote a culture of achievement for their students, that we feel it's equally important to ensure that schools and districts are enforcing that culture through elevating and recognizing teachers and educators for their achievements. We would encourage schools to think about ways to engage educators who have been recognized for excellence and engage them in things such as reviewing exit surveys and school climate and culture data and responses is a way to help prepare them to advance their career so that you can retain them within your school and district. In addition to work that's being done around the teacher pipeline, we know that many schools and districts are also paying attention to their administrator pipeline and how they can ensure that they are preparing the next generation of great building leaders as well. So locally, we'd like schools and districts to investigate avenues for their teachers so that they can be recognized in front of the most community members possible, so that the community can be aware of how accomplished their local teachers are, especially for folks who may have students that are no longer a part of the local school district or have gone through their school graduated 5, 10 years ago, they're not as plugged in as they used to be, and so it's important for them to continue to see that there's excellence going on in those local schools. Examples of that would be to have teachers recognize the halftime of sporting events, bring them out during a halftime of a football game, basketball game, volleyball game, and say, hey, this is a great teacher that we want to recognize in front of you, the folks that they help serve. And what we're trying to do is really shift some of the narrative around how people think about recognition programs generally, that it's not just so that we're saying, hey, look, here's one great teacher in the school. We know that that teacher is representative of the broader culture, climate, and work that goes on within that school. Likewise, we know that a lot of teachers do not seek out the spotlight, and they tend to be very humble about their accomplishments, even though that they are highly skilled experts who should be acknowledged not only for their work with students, but their work within the teaching and education profession. This may require an intentional culture shift where teachers know that being recognized for outstanding work doesn't mean that as an awardee that they're somehow better than their colleagues, but rather that the skill set and work in a particular area for which they're being recognized, that it's especially relevant and worthy of elevation at the time the award is given. Externally, it's important for those who do not visit your school to see the work that educators do. And to be frank, an award is an effective attention grabber when trying to get the media in your school to see something positive that's going on. At the state level, we recognize that when a teacher is named as, for example, a regional teacher of the year, it's not because they operate and achieve things in a vacuum. They have been encouraged by colleagues and building leaders who have helped them grow and succeed, and those colleagues and building leaders have taken the time to help each other grow as well, so that their practice as a whole can better serve their students. So some of the recognition programs that we have at the state level are the Michigan Teacher of the Year program, which includes our 10 regional teachers of the year who comprise the Teacher Leadership Advisory Council. We also have the Innovative Educator Corps, which is our newest recognition program that was created under the Marshall Plan for Talent that was passed last year. We have our #ProudMichiganEducator campaign, which is now in its 4th year. It is a video and media series that we do to highlight the work of teachers across the state. And this year, the Presidential Awards for Excellence in Math and Science Teaching is being coordinated through the Michigan Department of Education. The Michigan Teacher of the Year and PAINTS programs are open to all teachers, both in public and private schools. So a little bit of background about each of our programs, starting with the Teacher of the Year program, which dates back to 1952. Michigan was one of the original adopters of a state Teacher of the Year program following creation of the National Teacher of the Year program. For this program, we utilize an open nomination process where anyone can nominate a teacher. The nominee is eligible to apply as long as they are properly certified and in good standing with their school. They have at least 5 years experience teaching in Michigan schools, and in their current role that they work directly with students. The Teacher of the Year program looks for folks who are great advocates, not just for the teaching profession, but especially for their students. And in the last 2 years, we've had more than 400 teachers each year who have been nominated by their colleagues, building leaders, students, parents, especially past students and parents and community members for their outstanding work. Right now, we are about halfway through our Teacher of the Year program cycle for 2019-2020. Today is actually the last day for those who are regional semifinalists to submit Part B of their application. Once we go through, we finish reviewing and scoring all of our Part B applications, we will name our 10 regional teachers of the year. We follow the MASA regions map, so there are 10 regions statewide, and each teacher will essentially serve as a representative from on behalf of their colleagues and students within that region. And they all serve on the Michigan Teacher Leadership Advisory Council, which helps connect educators in each of those regions to resources at the state level. It also helps us at the Michigan Department of Education gather valuable feedback and better incorporate educator voice into the work that we do so we can better serve teachers and students. The Michigan's Teacher of the Year program is sponsored by MEMIC, and they provide funds to help cover the cost of travel for the Regional Teachers of the Year, which includes sub-costs for their schools. From among those 10 Regional Teachers of the Year, each of them have an opportunity to interview in Lansing in mid-April for the overall Michigan Teacher of the Year position. The overall Teacher of the Year represents Michigan's teachers and students at national events. They have a seat at the State Board of Education where each month they present alongside one of the Regional Teachers of the Year on an issue of importance to educators in a particular region of our state. They are also our applicant for National Teacher of the Year, and they're able to attend several conferences throughout the year with their State Teacher of the Year counterparts in the other 49 states plus U.S. territories. The Innovative Educator Corps, the goal of this program is to honor educators who have programs that are dedicated to helping their students become career ready, especially in high demand fields and even more specifically high demand fields within their school service area. The program was established through the Marshall Plan for Talent, and the program awards two $5,000 stipends, one of which is for the educator personally in recognition of the work that they have done so far, and the other can be used to help offset the cost of the IEC member sharing, expanding, and helping other educators replicate that innovative program so that it can have an impact on more students, helping more of Michigan students find a future career that will be satisfying and worthwhile, hopefully keeping them within their community and the state of Michigan. Each stipend for an IEC member can be renewed for up to a total of 3 years, and we are going to be opening the application window for those interested in joining the second cohort of the IEC later this spring. Our Proud Michigan Educator campaign is geared to help find educators with great stories about why they became a teacher and why they are passionate about the education profession, and taking those stories so that we can share them more broadly and help elevate the teaching and education professions. For our video part of the series, each video primarily features usually one educator and includes their students, colleagues, building leaders, and community members discussing how this teacher or educator embodies the passion that people should have for teaching. And if you know of an educator who should be featured in a future video, we just ask that you send us a letter describing why this educator's work is especially noteworthy and how their passion for education is evident. Unlike the prior two recognition programs, this is something that doesn't involve any additional work on the part of the educator. We'll schedule a meeting with them to go over and do some filming, or we can also take blog posts, podcasts, other interviews with the educator in whatever format would be most appropriate for discussing and describing their passion for education. And lastly, talking about the Presidential Awards for Excellence in Math and Science Teaching. This is a national program. We are coordinating the Michigan selection process. Each year, it alternates between elementary and secondary teachers. So this year, we are in the 7-12, the 7-12 year. Next year will be a K-6 year. We can submit up to 3 finalists in the math and science discipline, so a total up to 6 total finalists. And the goal is to find educators with great instructional practices in the fields of math and science. And since the program was founded in 1983, more than 4,800 educators nationwide have been recognized for their outstanding abilities in teaching math and science. Applications are reviewed by a group of statewide stakeholders and scored based on the applicant's instructional abilities. And as part of the application process, they are asked to submit assessment data, to take videos of themselves in their classrooms so that our reviewers can really get a sense for how each applicant thinks about their practice, and as well as having an opportunity to see them in action with their students. So that is all of our programs. If you have any questions, please do not hesitate to give me an email or give me a call.
Thank you again for joining us today. Our upcoming webinars are listed on this slide. There's 3 more webinars in this series on educator workforce and how to support your local educators. There is a registration link at the bottom of the page which will take you to the site. We do ask you to register for each of those individually. Additionally, participants in our live webinar can earn Sketch credit for joining us. At the conclusion of the webinar series in May, an email will come out from the MOAC system that will help to finalize the process for earning that Sketch credit. We're tracking attendance throughout the webinar series of who participated live, and we'll make sure that those participants earn their Sketch credit. Here is our contact information for myself, Joe Priest, Brian Lloyd, our student growth specialist, and also the one who focuses on the teacher mobility data, and Josh Reisner, who's our recognition specialist here at the MDE. So please feel free to reach out and contact us if we can help you further. We're going to leave you with our webinar today by clicking on the first link in the web links down here, which is one of our Proud Michigan Educator videos. So we'll hopefully take a few minutes to enjoy this this focus on an educator doing great work out in the field. Again, thank you for joining us for today, and enjoy your weekend.